Yes, folks, hello, welcome once again to Monetary Games and Collectibles. It's time for another action figure review here on the channel. And as you can see on the screen in front of you right now, today's installment is going to be taking a closer look at the brand new G.I. Joe Classified Series Hit and Run figure. So stick around, I'm going to give you all the ins and outs, ups and downs about Hit and Run here. So if you've been thinking about picking one up for yourselves, you'll have plenty of information to make the decision as to whether he's the figure for you. Going to kick things off by jumping back in time and visiting past Chris, who's taking a look at the packaging on the day that Hit and Run arrived on my doorstep. Then we'll move into the figure itself, talk about the aesthetic experience, the visual qualities, the visual experience with Hit and Run. Then move on to the articulation and posability and show off a bit of how he moves. Then on to the accessories and have a rundown of those and decide whether they're added value. Compare him next to a couple of other G.I. Joe Classified Series figures. And with all that said and done, you should have plenty of nice, thorough information to let you know whether this guy is worth cracking your wallet or your purse open for. So let's get into it. Let's jump back in time and visit past Chris, taking a look at the packaging. Here we go. Okay then, folks, here's Hit and Run in packaging. Standard G.I. Joe Classified Series packaging. Got the carbon fibre motif in the background there, the logo at the bottom, the name in the top left, and of course the big window showing off the figure and all the goodies. Then on the back, we can see he's 188 in the line, digital render picture, action shot type thing, couple of breakaway windows with some key features highlighted, all the legal bollocks and malarkey across the bottom. And then, of course, we've got the biographical file card information here. Let's take a look at some of Hit and Run skills, shall we? First up here, folks, we've got a shield. Hit and Run is a notorious LARPer at the weekend, dresses up as a knight. He's called Sir Hits and Runs a Lot. And that's his shield with his sigil on it. This might look like a pile of bullets, but it's not. It's actually stacked empty prime bottles. Hit and Run got kind of caught up in the whole craze a couple of years back. Got each of the special edition bottles, and he's got them all in like a wine rack in his room. Very peculiar. This eyeball with a line through it, this represents Blofeld. Hit and Run is a massive James Bond fan. Although he's not a James Bond fan, he roots for the villains, would you believe, for a Joe character. I know, it's backwards, but he's particularly into Blofeld and his scar over his eye. And then finally, we've got his climbing stuff because, he's a climber, innit? Artwork on the side there, he's going for a little stroll in a little countryside scene with the mountains in the background. That's nice, isn't it? Aw. And then the side with all the repeat crap and the QR code to nowhere. I mean, if you're minting box, there ain't nobody stacking their figures this side, are they? They're doing it that way or that way for sure. So who really gives a shit about this side? And there we go then, folks. Let's Hit and Run in packaging for the minting box folks or anyone interested to see what it looks like on the shelf. But I'm not minting box. I'm going to crack this bad boy open, get good and hands-on, have some man-child playtime, take down some review thoughts while I pose him up, display him up, take some photos, etc., etc. Have him as a desk figure for a little while. Occupy myself on some work team calls with him. So yeah, stick around. Future Chris is going to be with you in just a second to share those review thoughts. In fact, he's going to be with you in 3, 2, 1. Okay, folks, well, let's get into the aesthetic, the visual experience with Hit and Run. And here is the figure, just raw, without any of the accessories added as he came out of the packaging. And of course, the first thing that would strike anyone who's been around G.I. Joe for a while is that this is yet another G.I. Joe Classified Series character that has been heavily inspired by the vintage original figure. The colour scheme, the greens with the camo pattern, although if memory serves me right, it's a different type of camo pattern. The camo painted face, the black webbing with the grenades hanging off the shoulders is all very vintage inspired. It just looks like a 6-inch version of the original vintage figure with very few embellishments. There are a couple, but very few. We'll zoom in a minute, but they've kind of, added some detail into the webbing and the climbing gear with his, his D-clips and stuff. I don't think the original figure had the holster or the knife sheath on the wrist, but outside of that, yeah, hugely inspired by the vintage figure. Moving in a little closer then, so you can see some of the finer details. We can see that it's a good quality G.I. Joe Classified Series head sculpt, up to the usual standard. Obviously, a lot of paint application on the face sculpt this time. I normally point out things like eyebrows and eyes, but he's obviously got his camo paint. He's painted green with the dark smears across there, which is all nice and kind of ties together well. And it's consistent throughout. You can see, the neck. And he's even painted his arms there. Can you see? And his fingers. He's just completely covered himself in the camo paint. The facial features are good. The facial shape, the cheeks, the chin, the lips, the nose, etc., etc. The paint applications on the eyes are applied very well. And then we've got the sculpt on the hair as well. Moving further down, you can see lots of finer detail in the sculpt in the main body too. So we've got the collar up here with the little zip sculpted in, the grenades that are mounted on his shoulder pieces are there. Nice sculpting on the pouches across the front. You see that leathery texture in there and studs and whatnot, and then the magazines that have been tucked in. Nice texture detail in the uniform. You can see like a bit of bunching up here where it's tucked in at his belt line. A little bit of bunching up here around by the wrists, and the same again down by the ankles as it meets the boot. And in addition to obviously the paint applications that are in the camo, we've got the grenades here painted in green, and then a little bit of paint applied to this loop. This kind of climbing rope control loop at the front, and then his carabiner D-clips here round the side. And you can see that sculpting carries on all the way around into the rear as well. It's a shame that these carabiner clips have got that kind of black plastic centering, that they're not, not holes in there like they've done at the front here, which is a bit of a disappointment, but nonetheless, it's fine. I'm always a big fan when there's a little bit of a paint application thrown in there just to bring it to life a bit. It adds a little bit to the depth, which I'm all for. Got some other little details in here, like the pockets on the sleeves. He's got his little wristband here, the gloves with some sculpted detail in them. And then as you move down into the legs, you can see the texture detail in the trousers. You can see the sculpted details of all the various combat trouser pockets that he's got in there. And then nicely sculpted boots too. One thing about the figure, which is kind of aesthetic, but not aesthetic, they've got a little slot in here, a little magazine slot. For obviously holding the loose magazine. You obviously get the one that's in the rifle itself, which we'll have a look at a little bit later on. But no second magazine to pop in there. And I just don't see many instances where you would be posing him with his rifle without the magazine in it, to be honest, even though adding the magazine adds a little bit to the look. I don't know, just funny, interesting choice to me, that, especially when they've sculpted in mags on the other two pockets. Colour scheme wise, I mean, he's clearly just a massive blob of green with some black embellishments. I mean, literally with the camo paint on the skin sections as well. He's just like green head to toe. A little bit of brown hair at the top, which obviously doesn't, give him away too much. And then green all the way down. Oop, not the camera. And when you see him a little later on with the helmet on as well, that's it. He's just a massive blob of green with a load of black on him, which is fine. He's a what is he on his file card? A mountaineering infantryman. In combat gear with a combat aesthetic. He's wearing camouflage. He's camouflaged his skin sections. So, it's fine. I just sometimes find the more toy soldiery type characters a little bit bland, just when it's green head to toe. That said, he has got quite a bit of personality. I think maybe the camo on the face adds a little something. So I think aesthetically, I'm going to give him a thumbs up. He's not entirely my cup of tea. Regulars around these parts know that I'm a little bit more into the wackier, more colourful side of G.I. Joe. I like the science fiction and the supernaturally stuff, and I'm less turned on by the more toy soldiery types. However, if you are looking for a solid toy soldier, you can't go much wrong, and he will look great next to the likes of, Leatherneck and Gung-Ho and Stalker and so on and so forth. It works. It definitely works. So I can't criticise it. It's just not my taste, But I do think he's got quite a bit of personality, and his specialism, as a mountaineering specialist, is well communicated through the raw figure alone, and that just aesthetically increases as you start to embellish him with his accessories. So all good on that front. So there you go. There's the aesthetic and visual experience. Let's now take a look at his articulation and posability, shall we? And as always, folks, with a G.I. Joe Classified Series review, it's standard G.I. Joe Classified Series articulation, so if you're already very familiar with it, you probably won't find much information of use in this next little section, so please avail yourself of the chapters I've put in. Jump ahead to the timestamp where I start talking about the accessories and added value. However, if this is the first G.I. Joe Classified Series review you've ever watched, or you're interested to know whether there's any particular quirks, stick around and I'll give you a walking through, starting with the head. And as usual, it's the ball in the base of the neck, ball in the base of the skull, which gives you down to about there, gives you up to about there. You can full 360 exorcist it, and then you can tilt and swivel on top of the ball joint. Moving down into the shoulders, got the butterfly joint, the hinge, and the peg, so you can shuffle a bit forward and back, go full 360 all the way around, and you can T-shape him out to there. Swivel there at the top of the bicep and tricep. Got a pinless double elbow that will get you up to there. And then the standard pegged-in wrists, so you can move on the wrist line there. And the right hand has a forward and back hinge, and the left hand has an up and down hinge. Coming into the torso, it's the standard ab crunch hinge and the ball joint in the waist. The ab crunch is okay. Going forwards, all right. It's not obstructed too much by the gear, but he's not got a great back too much. And then all this stuff sort of bunched in around the ball joint gets in the way of you using the ball joint. Although, as you can see, there's still some movement in there. Down into the hips and the groin, it's the ball joint, the drop-down ball joint there. The webbing does get in the way of your forward quite a bit there, and it does get in the way of your Russian ballet splits. Look, not going to make much of a ballerina, this guy. Then swivel at the top of the thigh. The pinless double knee will get you up to there. You got boot cut at the top of the boot, and then the hinge and rocker in the ankles and feet. So yeah, hit and run moves fine. Thumbs up on the articulation. The posability is a-okay. I was messing around with a few ideas the other night, taking some photos, and I was not limited by the articulation, kind of bringing what I was seeing in my imagination to life, bringing it to life. So that's all good. The gear getting in the way of some of the movements, not a massive impediment. It does restrict a little bit, but not hugely. It gets a little bit more when you start adding things like his duffel bag in, but you have to just be patient and finesse it, which, as regulars around these parts know, I'm not so patient and I'm not good at the finesse. But overall, yeah, the G.I. Joe Classified Series articulation is good. It gives you a wide range of possibilities in terms of what you might want to do with the character. So, yeah, A-okay. Hit and run does the business. All good on that front. Right then, let's now take a look at his accessories and added value, shall we? And I'm going to get started with his headgear, which I've popped on the figure there. You can see you've got his helmet and his goggles, his signature red-coloured goggles. This is nice, yeah, it's obviously a kind of hard hat kind of design for a mountaineer. Good sculpted detail in there. He's got the black stripes across the side and some extra embellishments just to bring it to life and give it some depth. And then the goggles are in the red transparent colour that is, the character's known to wear. It's got that big loop, that big elasticated loop, so that you can stretch it across his helmet, and you can stretch it down and put it over his eyes, although over his eyes looks a bit stupid. I don't know, you tell me. I just don't like the way they sit over the top of the eyes there, but you can do, and it's possible to do. There's enough diameter in the strap to get in there. I've just brought him a little bit closer and put a bit more extra light on here, because one thing I did want to point out is out the box, this chin strap was extremely brittle. So much so that before I even really realized and noticed, I went to put the helmet on the figure, and you can see, I don't know if it's coming out on the camera under the lights, but kind of stress marks at the top here where it joins the helmet, and then across the bottom here where the chin strap piece is, to the point where it nearly snapped. Now I've heated it up, I've made it a little bit more pliable, it's fine now, but it was definitely, I suppose what I'm saying is, when you take them out of the box, folks, exercise caution when popping the helmet on for the very first time, if yours is a bit brittle like mine. Then, mountaineering specialist, climbing specialist, we've got his climbing gear, we've got his grappling hook with the string piece on it there. And then this thing, which I didn't really know what it was, but I asked a couple of Joe Bros on the front line, and then they said it's something to do with his climbing rope. So I think you're supposed to tie it round and it helps you pull it tight or something. I'm not sure, but it's there nonetheless, and you can make good use of that in the, when you're displaying him or posing him up, or some of the photos I was taking, I was trying my hand at a little bit of wall climbing photography, but I didn't pull it off very well. Didn't come out very well. Little side note, I tried the Batman method. And it just didn't work. I've not got the eye for it. And then I tried again after getting some pointers off my mates, and still couldn't get it right. So whatever. I'll keep at it though, folks. I'll keep at it. But yeah, grappling hook and a climbing holdery thing, all good and dandy. That's fine. We then got his shoulder bag, his duffel bag here, which has got the strap across the front, which is on hinges, so you can move the strap. It's got the machete sheath at the side, which we'll take a look at the machete in a minute. Nice sculpted details, carry handle at the top, and then you can open up the main body of it to store his gear in, just drop his gear in. And one thing it doesn't have that the vintage figure had was obviously you can mount the rope through the duffel bag and have him carrying it up the string with him, and there was a couple of holes, if memory serves right, with a little bit to wrap it round in the middle. But this doesn't have that. What I did notice, though, is that up here by the hinges, where you can hinge open this this top flap to get into the duffel bag, there's this extra little gap in there, a little bit of space. So what I've been doing is I've been using that to sort of replicate the old vintage style of carrying his duffel bag underneath him. And onto his weapon loadout. Here's his assault rifle here, which is pretty standard. The single piece of molded plastic. I don't think we've seen it. Pretty confident we've not seen this gun before in the line. Wants a nice sculpted detail in there to bring it to life. Got his suppressor, got his little laser dot sight. The magazine's removable, as I was pointing out before, with that little pouch at the front. It's not too loosey-goosey either, although at the back end, a wee touch, but better than most. One thing I will point out is that his hands are quite shallow for gripping this. If I just get that and try and put it in there, you see the fingers don't come round great. I think I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's because they've painted them or something to do with the hand design with the glove. I'm not sure, but sometimes I find when I'm just trying to get him sort of angled up into a shooting pose, it pops out. It pops out while I'm trying to do things, which is a bit annoying. Then we have his handgun. Again, single piece of molded plastic. Pretty sure we've probably seen this one before in the line. Got that little Lethal Weapon, Die Hardy, what's it called, Beretta look about it to me. But it's fine, A-OK. Nice sculpted details. Looks like the gun it's supposed to be. And he's got on-figure storage with the holster leg there. The holster leg, the leg holster. See this leg on his holster? No, but pop that in there. It spoke for a second there, but yeah, nice fit in there. Then Hit and Run's got a couple of useful blades. He's got this big kind of machete thing, and then this smaller blade here. We've seen this one before for sure. I know I've got a couple of these hanging around in the bits box with this smaller blade and the sculpted grip on the handle there. And then the longer kind of machete blade, again with the sculpted grip on the side, on the end there, presumably to cut himself out of tangles if he needs to while he's like climbing mountains and what have you. Shame they haven't painted the blades. I'm always a bigger fan of metallic painted blades on these, but they're fine. And then in terms of storage, this one goes on the figure, the smaller one goes on the figure, and then this one's got the sheath in the duffel bag that I showed you before. So that just slides in there like so. And then this one got a little wrist sheath there, like so. Is it the other way around? Yeah, there you go. Better fit the other way around. So yeah, the accessory selection is good. Give it a thumbs up. It ties into his specialist field as a mountaineer, as a climber. It's fun. It's got the nostalgia factor for the vintage figure fans as well, because it's all very heavily inspired by the vintage figure. It comes together well. The only note that I'll have, the only thing I pointed out is that, and you can probably see it here actually with the way I've posed him, the strap on the duffel bag is quite rigid and can be a little bit awkward when you're trying to pose him up in certain poses, carrying it and stuff, especially when it's draped across, cross-shoulder draped, like I've got it now with all the gear and stuff at the front. And if you can see just there, if you squint, it means that the little pop stud holding that in place starts to come a bit loose. It's a bit rigid, and it's very difficult to get a nice look on him with it draped down the side while he's holding his rifle. It's just about problem solving then, really, and just trying to figure it out. But that would be my only criticism. I suppose the only other thing I would say is I perhaps might have liked a little something else in the sort of mountaineering flavour. Perhaps something like an ice axe or two or something. But that's just me being greedy and always wanting more accessories with my figures. Overall, this is fine. It allows you to tell your story with Hit and Run. It leans into his specialism. It's all good. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. All right, folks. Well, let's now take a look at Hit and Run next to a couple of other G.I. Joe Classified Series characters, shall we? So here's Hit and Run next to Lowlight. Here he is next to Stalker. Here he is next to Leatherneck. And here he is next to Alpine. All right then, folks. Well, here's Hit and Run going around on the turntable so you can get a nice 360 view of the figure. And while he's doing that, I'll give you a few final thoughts. And yeah, he's fine. He's fine. My bias is more inclined towards I like the spookier, I like the science fictionier, I like the balmier, I like the brighter colours. When they're just a straight up toy soldier, I'm not always as excited as I am about other things. I like weird and wonderful Vipers. That's what I'm in it for. However, I know there's a lot of folks who do really love the toy soldier stuff, and he's a good figure. There's no two ways about it. He poses well. He's got good accessories. He looks good. He looks like what he's supposed to be, a mountaineering infantryman. It all works. So I'm saying he's fine with the small print and caveat that I'm applying my own bias towards the balmier, wackier side of G.I. Joe to those comments, which I think is only fair because it's one of those lines that's got a little something for everyone. But I have to say, as a desk figure hanging around for about a week now, I've been playing around with him quite a lot, so I can't be that aggrieved or turned off by the toy soldieriness of him, because they're just good, aren't they? Sometimes the toy soldiers get a rifle in their hands and he's just playing around with all these different kind of combatty shooty poses, which is what I've been doing with him while sitting on my Teams calls with work. So yeah, all good. Thumbs up. I would recommend him if you're into the classic look, the vintage look of the character. You're into the more military accurate style dudes, as military accurate as G.I. Joe can be, then this is probably the figure for you. So there we go. All right, folks. Well, thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this review useful. If you did, if this helped you make your mind up as to whether hit and run's for you. Sorry, I had a little cough there. If it made your mind up and hit and run's the figure for you, then please do hit the thumbs up and subscribe and do all the YouTubey stuff. Otherwise, all that remains to say is thank you very much for coming along and watching. I'm glad you did find it useful. You made it all the way to the end here. So come back again for another video sometime soon and have yourselves a great day. All right, take it easy, folks. Bye-bye now.